Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday, I guess it is. It is crappy and rainy here in Wisconsin, so I hope you are experiencing something a little bit better than we are. As you start to join us, pop your location, what your weather is like, your favorite question about digital strategy, what you had for breakfast, anything you want to share with us into the comments. And today, we're doing the same thing that we did last month, not week, where we are here to answer your questions. So this will run as long or as short as it needs to based off of the audience questions that we get as we start going. How you doing this morning, James?
Good. I'll tell you what I had for breakfast. I had coffee and creatine.
I don't know if that's like a breakfast, really, as much as just like liquids that you took in the morning.
Yeah, it's true. But here I am, I'm here. I wouldn't even say that I'm surviving. I'd say I'm thriving on my coffee and creatine right now. So
Ooh, he's
I'm ready
thriving,
to party.
everybody. As we're waiting for questions and comments to come in, one of the things that I wanted to talk with you about, James, this morning that I think is important for people to understand is how does the idea of simplicity, clarity, 80/20, whatever we want to call it, play into a digital strategy?
Yes. So there's so many different things you could do. And this is something I talk about pretty often with our clients, in that essentially the problem isn't that there's not enough opportunity, is that there's too much opportunity out there. There's too many different things you could be doing, whether that means different social channels, different content strategies, different customer segments to go after, different products you can offer to your customers. More often than not, when we're advising clients, the issue is that they're trying to do too much, not that they're trying to do too little. So I'm a big fan of simplifying, having clarity around who your customer is, what the problem is that they have, why it matters, and how you solve it. Being very, very clear about that when it comes to your sales strategy. And then from a content strategy, you're saying, okay, who is that customer? What information do they need to learn? What information do they need to know? And then building a content strategy around that. And the same thing, knowing which customer it is, where does that customer go online? How do they do research? Understanding that, and really building your model around that. And it's harder when you're getting started because you don't have all that information ready to go. But for business that's been around for 3+ years, you have good historical data. If you go back through your sales data, back through your CRM data, back through your marketing information, you'll start to see trends in that list. And that's always a good indicator of what you're good at doing and what you should kind of double down on. And again, kind of what fire you should throw more fuel on in the process. So that's how I view it. It's always easier said than done, but I'm a big fan of looking and clarifying and simplifying through that methodology.
One of the things that you helped me do really early on in the journey of like content creation prior to us starting the business was you sat me down at our kitchen table and you told me to like distill my thoughts down to 3 points. And this was specifically centered around the idea of change management. And that was like really the beginning of my change management for everyone framework, was distilling it down to 3 pieces. And then we talk a lot about the rule of 3 when it comes to having content pillars. So picking like 3 key categories that you are going to create content within, because it's a little bit easier for your brain to like jump into creating and thinking about different ways to present those same ideas if you've got these 3 content pillars that you're going to come back to time and time again. Same thing with when you're creating a presentation. The rule of 3 is memorable. It helps people remember how you've bucketed out your content and have your presentation and your message stay with them a little bit longer. So 3 is not a lot. And sometimes when it comes to like narrowing down what you're talking about, having it only be 3 categories is really difficult to like distill down if you're trying to boil the ocean. But that's the best way to get people to really remember you and remember your message. Hi, Meg. I'm so glad that you joined us. Certainly let us know if you've got any questions or things that you want to talk about tied to digital strategy. Obviously, you're really great with your podcast and getting your message out authentically, but we're happy to help if there's any questions that you've got about maybe getting the message out to more people.
Yeah, I want to jump into what you just said. First, not the hi Meg, but hi Meg. But the other part about distilling your message down, and you hear often when it comes to like personal branding or content strategy to build out content pillars and having kind of some frameworks you can use to do your content. But I want to emphasize quick that like it's really, really hard to do that if you're not already creating content and you're not already doing some of the things. I see a mistake people make right when they're beginning doing a digital strategy is that they try and over formalize the process too much. They try and think they need to have all these things defined about their personal brand, their content strategy, yada, yada, yada. You really can't do that until you've gotten some groundwork done, right? And you've started to actually practice creating content. And when I say practice, like actually creating content, publishing it, getting reactions from people. Again, I find it just like looking at sales data and trying to figure out who your best customer is. I find it much easier once you have data to look at trends and then pull back and say, okay, what's working, what's not working, what do I want to double down on, what do I enjoy doing? Those are all good things and good signs for me. So I just want to emphasize that point because that's a common thing we see when working with some of our community members who are brand new to this idea of doing digital strategy is that they think they need to over define everything they're doing. And I think it's better just to get started and then kind of work backwards from there. So I just wanted to call that out as
that's also, I mean, that's a really good point too. We talk about this a lot, that you have to experiment with different types of content to figure out what feels right for you and what resonates with your audience, and how to really get people to engage in the way that you're hoping to get comments that allow you to make content creation easier. And it's difficult if you haven't created content before to figure out what feels natural and authentic to you without trying other things. So now, after 5 years, people would think that it's silly that I once upon a time did not think that video was my medium, because obviously that is like what I enjoy creating. That's how I've connected with so many people. And that's been so great for me. But like, you can attest to the fact that when you told me to do video the first time, I was like, oh no one's going to watch it. I'm not going to like it. I'm going to be awkward. Because no one likes to watch themselves back on video. No one likes to hear their own voice unless there's other issues in the background. But I had to go through that process of trying it out to figure out what I liked and how I could communicate with people most effectively. And for you, that looks really different than it does for me.
Yeah, no, I've definitely evolved over time. And I've been doing content online since 2003. I was a middle school, boy who built a website for video game content initially. So I've been doing content in many different forms for, how many years is that? 22 years? Doesn't seem right.
I don't know, but everybody heard it here first that you were a World of Warcraft guy.
I didn't mention World of Warcraft specifically, but yes, that was one of the games. But my content's evolved over time, and if you stay stagnant in just one idea, because that's what you set out, you obviously want to have an end goal in mind and a vision of a future you want to build for your business and yourself. But at the same time, you also need to be flexible in how you get there and how you're learning and how you're iterating on things. I was reading an audiobook when I was walking this weekend, and one of the things that kind of stuck out to me in this analogy someone gave was talking about how like you could have 10 years of experience, or in my case 22 years, right? You could have 10 years of experience, or you could have 1 year of experience and repeat that same 1 year 10 times, right? You see that pretty often with people who are unwilling to adapt in their career and in their life, what they're doing. And years of experience don't really mean anything if you're just repeating that same year over and over again. You're not learning, you're not growing, you're not trying new things. And that's critically important in digital strategy because this world is changing so fast. Whether it's the social channels, whether it's the tools you're using to actually create content, whether it's the sales methodology and how customers are wanting to buy on the other end of it, all of that stuff is changing so fast and will only get more, frequently updated and changed, and the world's only going to evolve faster. So if you are someone who is resting on your laurels of I've been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years. And I see it all the time in digital marketing, right? Like digital marketers who haven't had an updated view of what SEO means or what web design means or what a good lead magnet is, all of these things. So I'm kind of rambling now, but the
Or
point
the
being
people
is
that
making
show
sure you're
up on
adapting.
LinkedIn in the video comments saying like, when did LinkedIn become TikTok? What is this? But it's like kind of funny because they are seeing it and engaging with it and being pulled into video. So clearly it's a valuable tactic that is getting their attention. But instead of adapting and pushing themselves outside of their comfort zone and figuring out how to use that tool, they're going to angry comment behind their keyboard that it's useless and nonsense, even though people are sharing really valuable information there.
Yes, it's always the haters. The people who are actually doing things online, people who are actually getting shit done, are not the ones who are throwing shade in comments or talking bad about people that are doing different things. It's always the people who are not doing a damn thing. Who it's insecurity, right? Because they're not the ones doing things, and they're the best way to feel better about not doing things is to critique people who are doing things. Teddy Roosevelt had the "man in the arena" quote. Am I making that up in my head? Maybe someone in the comments knows that. I think it was Teddy Roosevelt had this little it's called the "man in the arena," right? You can look it up. His whole thing there is like, you want to be the person in the arena. You want to be having to fight. You can't be the spectator who's just out there yelling things, because that's not going to do anything for you. Like, the true people who are going to be successful are in the arena having the fight. And even if you lose the fight, you are at least fighting. You're not the one just watching. So that's my view on sports too.
There's a lot of stuff that talks about like everybody who is now an expert started as a beginner, and they remember their moments as being a beginner. So they're never going to, Mr. Beast is never going to fault someone for the first video he made. There's for pop culture references, Post Malone has some of the most embarrassing, cringy stuff I've ever seen on the internet, but now he's one of the biggest pop stars in the world. Like, you have to start somewhere, and that creation process has to begin at ground zero. And some people progress faster than others, or some people will kind of like hit that point of like figuring out their stride earlier than someone else. But the people that have gone through that process are never going to fault you from starting. And, we've talked about this many times. Like, there's plenty of stuff that if I scroll back to the beginning of my TikTok content and I watch it, I'm like, oh my God, that's so cringy. I don't love that. Or the very first interview I did where you can visibly tell that I was uncomfortable to be on camera. And like, even my hand gestures and stuff, if you pay really close attention, I was like borderline shaking to be on video in those early days of COVID when I first started. But I acutely remember all of that, and I know how uncomfortable it is to move through that process. So if I see somebody that's not perfectly polished on video, I'm not going to fault them. I'm going to say, like, look at you going. It's going to get easier. You're going to get there. You're going to figure out how to work with it. And so I think that's really important to remember. And then also, like, when you're in that moment and maybe you feel like you're being judged, or somebody thinks you're being cringy, or all of the other different, like, maybe there's people that are sending my posts and messages to their friends and talking shit about me. But at the end of the day, that doesn't take away from all of the benefits that have come from content creation, the ability that I had to grow the businesses that I worked for, or now growing our business and hopefully helping people with the content that I've created over the last 5 years. That all outweighs any sort of like mean message that might be sent in the background, or mean thoughts that someone might have.
Yeah. No, I'll emphasize too. It's always people not doing things or talking smack behind your back. So you could ignore the haters in that regard.
I see that we have a handful of people that have not come into the comments and said hello. And this is everybody's reminder that you either get what's inside James and I's head and like roll off kitchen counter conversation right now as we're talking through things, or you have the opportunity to throw questions into the chat tied to content creation, sales strategy. Again, any question that you want to ask us, as long as it's not offensive, we'll probably answer you. So throw your questions into the comments, because this session's only going to last as long as it's valuable for all of you.
So here's a question to get you started. Let's talk about getting you started. I'm assuming there's people who are on this video right now, watching it live or watching a recording of it, who have not really in earnest started a digital strategy. They are just kind of winging it when it comes to trying to develop their business, their sales strategy. Where would you tell people to get started, Emma?
So the first thing, and you were talking a little bit about like speaking to your audience and kind of like figuring out what resonates. The first thing that you need to do is kind of go through a reflection exercise where you stop and you think about, who am I serving? What am I helping with? And how am I doing it? And thinking through exactly what you want to be known for and what you want to be teaching other people. What skill sets or valuable knowledge do you have that you want to help other people build? Now, oftentimes that's hopefully closely tied to what it is you do in your work so that it helps propel your career forward. But a lot of times it's kind of like something that is side by side with the product that you might be selling. So, for example, when I was selling software, I talked a lot about change management. I was not selling change management, but I had valuable knowledge tied to the people side of change that went alongside the product that I was selling. So it was not talking about my software and talking about the tools. It was talking about an area of expertise that I had that complemented what I was selling. So get really clear on what your unique value is and how you're going to help your audience with that. Kind of keeping in mind this idea of education and trying to be your audience's favorite teacher on whatever subject matter it is that you're an expert. Then once you've done that, I have kind of like 3 other steps. So that's like the foundational work. And then like the action that you're going to take to start building that brand is, with that information in mind, go to your LinkedIn profile and update it. Make sure that it is complete. It doesn't need to be the fanciest thing that anybody has ever seen, but have a banner image that represents who you are in some capacity. Make sure you've got a headshot that's accurate and actually allows people to see that you're a real person. And make sure it's professional, obviously, too. Like the weird cropped, like kind of dingy photos don't tell people who you are and make them impressed to interact with you as a professional. Update your About Me section so it speaks to what you're trying to educate people on. Go through and make sure that that's complete. Then start finding other people in your industry that you can meaningfully comment on their posts and engage with. And start conversations, ask questions, share your expertise, tag other people in your comments to get a conversation going, and start building those relationships through the comments. And then the last stage is probably the piece that's most intimidating to people, but I always suggest to start really small. Make a commitment to post once a week. You don't need to be posting every day. I really hate the like 30-day get started challenges where someone's going to post every single day for 30 days straight. You burn yourself out. The goal with a personal brand and the goal with like being able to build trust and authority here is making sure that you're showing up consistently. And if you can show up consistently once a week, you're showing up much more than many other people are. And that once a week is where you start to experiment with the content like we were talking about. Try a video, try an article, make a text post with a picture, do different things, collaborate with other people to figure out exactly what your style is. And over time, as you start moving through that process, content creation can become something that you enjoy and become a creative outlet for you, because you found a way to make it something that you appreciate, and you've found a community to help you expand your mind and think through different challenges that you haven't thought through in the past. But if you start with who you're serving and how you're serving them, update your LinkedIn, start engaging in conversations, and post once a week, you're going to start the momentum that you need to really build out a valuable strategy to take your career or your business to the next level.
I like it. I think, and to piggyback on that a little bit, I think just doing the first post is really important. And an easy spot, which you talked about, is putting yourself in the position of that favorite teacher and knowing who your audience is and educating them. If you were talking to clients on a weekly basis or daily basis, just write down questions they're asking, write down topics to come up, and then use that as inspiration for content creation. What basically answer frequently asked questions in a post, in a text post, that's a very, very easy way to get started. And you know it's going to resonate with your audience because you hear customers asking it. So if you hear the same questions popping up and up, over and over again, use that as inspiration for the content you create. And that's going to be a good way to answer questions that you know are relevant and actually, become that favorite teacher. So
this is a very big comment, so it's going to take up a lot of the screen. But the last question here is, should I give it a shot starting with video or stick to what's working? I personally believe you should give it a shot. I said it in the comment back to you here, and this is the statement that James said to me when I was first getting started. The worst that happens is no one watches it. Like maybe the absolute worst that happens is somebody says something mean to you in the comments or something like that. But realistically, we can go back to the comment about like what happens when you actually have reached haters and gotten mean comments. Usually that doesn't happen until you've reached a point where people are kind of like getting jealous of the content that you're creating and that kind of stuff. Ooh, James is getting fancy over here with the banners. You missed
this is on the fly with my Wayne Gretzky quote.
Sage wisdom there, James.
No, but I mean, so I'll say this. Short form video performs really well. And that's something we often emphasize with our clients on the advising side, as well as people in our community as well. And a big push, and for a lot of our community members, it's getting them comfortable with creating short form video, because that's a great way to reach people. It's a great way to build trust and familiarity. And it tends to be better from a sales perspective too, because people really feel like they know you if they've seen you on camera versus seeing your text posts. But not everyone enjoys creating content that way. Me and Emma have very different styles. I prefer written form. I prefer, newsletter style content, text posts, that type of thing. I'm here on video today. We're talking on video. So I use that in the mix of the content I create, but I would not feel bad if you don't prefer to create video content. I would just say, experiment with it, take a shot, see how it goes, maybe mix it into your content mix. But there are some prolific, great creators out there, business leaders for that matter too, who are, dog shit on camera, but they're actually super good when it comes to written conversation. So
I did not know he was going to say anything about people being dog shit on camera, because I've seen you on camera and that's not the case. But I also know that like you have your podcast that typically doesn't filter into video, but you enjoy creating the podcast content. You're really great at creating these intimate experiences for people in person. And you have consistently shown up in writing and content that feels incredibly authentic to you. And I think I personally, as someone who follows you, know to look out for Meg's content in that written form. And I feel like I have gotten to know you through that content, and you do a nice job of using pictures and things to like create that human connection that comes along with some of the video content too. So I would say, and this comes down to talking about the algorithm as a whole. It's really hard to chase the dragon of what the algorithm wants and like get the video feed is where they're pushing views right now, or you have a post that you spent a lot of time on and it gets like 300 impressions in comparison to something that you took 15 seconds on blowing up. That game of chasing all of those metrics is not a winning strategy when you are trying to build your business through content. Now, if you want to become a content creator who gets millions of views and that's your career and that's your job, then you need to focus on chasing those things. But if you're focused on building your business and building it authentically to you in a way that attracts the right customers for you, I think that's where you have to kind of be honest with yourself that the right 5 views is a lot more powerful than 500,000 views in the wrong direction. And I say this as somebody who has had videos blow up, and it feels nice. And that like dopamine kick that you get from those things is like, it's addicting. Like they've gamified these platforms in a way that makes you want to keep going for all of those vanity metrics. But I've also had videos that have gotten much, much smaller reach, but hit the right people that have generated business for us and helped me find really powerful, like, relationships that have helped me as a person or helped us grow our business. And so it can be really difficult when you maybe feel like what you want to create doesn't match up with what's going to help you get the most views. But I think there's always changes to the algorithm. And like right now on LinkedIn, they're pushing video really hard. There might come a time where they start to push text heavy posts again because people are fatigued with video. I've seen that back and forth probably 4 or 5 times now. So kind of sticking with what is resonating with you and will attract the right customers to you, I think is the best approach, because that's when you're going to stay consistent. That's when you're going to enjoy it. And that's when you're going to create the best content too.
Yeah. This goes back to, I think, the importance of knowing who you're creating content for. When I say content, social content, blogs, newsletters, whatever else, like truly understanding who your audience is, who your ideal customer is, and using them as inspiration for who you're talking to. Because, going back to the dopamine hit and the impressions and the clicks and all of that, like you could just post pictures of kittens and like inspirational quotes and you get a lot of impressions probably. I'm honestly tempted this week to maybe post a picture of our puppy and saying like, look at a puppy, like, and then maybe I can do that Wayne Gretzky quote across the bottom of it. And I probably get a lot of impressions on that and a lot of people excited about it, but like no one's going to come hire us to do sales strategy for their team because they saw a picture of my dog. Like that's not.
Maybe if you're a dog person,
let me rephrase.
100% of the shots you don't.
If it was my dog, at least it's a personal thing, maybe. So that's a kind of a bad analogy. Let's just say I find a picture of a really fluffy golden retriever puppy online. We don't have a golden retriever, and use that. That's not going to help us, right? So, to the point, like it's not about chasing the impressions and the clicks and all of that. It's about getting the right people to actually engage. And I think back, and this is not like, we're not trying to toot your own horn here, but like both Em and I have had, a handful of posts do 1 million+ impressions on LinkedIn. I'm on TikTok as well too. And a lot of those posts literally give us no leads at all, like 0 leads. We have some posts that get a couple hundred impressions and will give us, 5 to 10 leads. I'm thinking back to like last summer, we had a campaign we did. And like one post that did not have blowout impressions did great things from a lead perspective. So it truly is understanding your audience and who you're creating content for, and really leaning into that because it's I think it's probably one of the hardest things people getting started with content in general. I say about social, like you post, you have 2 people like it. Oh, I'm a failure kind of thing, right? But it's like you don't know. Like maybe you got 80 to 500 impressions on that post, and maybe some of your ideal customers actually saw it, they didn't engage with it, and it did help you move up a notch from a trust factor or from a buyer's journey perspective with that buyer, or vice versa. We have a handful of clients we're working with, and we're helping them build out an email series, right, or email newsletter. It feels kind of hard to write a newsletter when it's going to like very few people when you first start, but all it takes is one person who's in your pipeline who opens that email, who's like, yeah, that spoke to me. Let's move forward. And then you get that email or the call next week saying they want to move forward with the project with you. So it's a quality versus quantity game. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. And I think, Emma, you're going to create some content on it recently too. But another thing I want to emphasize too about getting started and then just, getting started with digital strategy and going through the process of that sticky beginning. But maybe you can speak to like the other benefits to creating content when it comes to like your ability to refine your sales messaging and all of that as well.
Yeah. So before I get to that question, James, I do want to this is a big one again, but so basically trying to promote company services, posting on LinkedIn, not getting much traction, suggesting ways that you could get started that gets traction and leads. Without going and deep diving into your content and taking a close look at like what you're sharing and how you're sharing it, please take this with a grain of salt. I would say one of the things that I often see happening, and I fell into when I first started and was selling software as well, was defaulting to talking about features and functionality and product. No one wants to read that. No one wants to engage in that. If they want that information, they're going to go to your website and they're going to look it up themselves. They're going to go reach out to you to have a demo to talk to you about that stuff. what they want from you online is establishing your expertise as a leader within your industry. So you talked about like mobile and web application development. Are you sharing best practices that people should be keeping in mind tied to rolling out a mobile application? Are you talking about the other things that surround the technology that you're implementing or building for people in a way that allows them to learn from your content and what to do while they are building out an application? Are you talking about your methodology behind how you build out these applications? Are you talking about what the process of working with you looks like? Because like that's oftentimes we default to what we would talk about in a sales cycle, or default to maybe like bits and pieces of the product demo, and at the right time and in the right place, bringing those pieces forward makes complete sense. But when you're looking at getting content that like is driving traffic to your business and really making people want to work with you, it's because you've spent time teaching them something. So James and I talk about our framework all the time. It's called the favorite teacher framework. And I always do this because it's like a little funnel, but it starts at the top with educational content. And teaching people something about your industry is the most important thing that you can do through your content. So you want to give them a taste of the value that you're going to bring as a partner in the working relationship that you have. So you want to be providing valuable insight that they can take action on, giving them something to think through or go back to their team and have a conversation with. And then what happens is you build the trust as that really great advisor. And you have other areas further down in the funnel where they can connect with you. They can get more value from a checklist or a guide on your website, or you have a webinar that's going to hit specifically on a pain point where they want to see your demo or they want to know more about your product and your service. And then you can bring them into kind of the final stage of helping them solve their specific problems in a consultative sale. But really focus on what area tied to the product and the service that you provide can you become the favorite teacher for? How can you educate people and give them tangible pieces of value that they can take away from your content before they've ever bought from you, before they've ever officially created this working relationship with you? And then that's when you earn their trust enough for them to download a resource from your website or subscribe to your email newsletter or all of these other things that we've been talking about. But it always starts with that educational content that provides value before any sort of exchange of money or business takes place. Do you want to add anything before I go back to your question, James?
Yeah, no, I will, because my last business was a web development firm, so kind of a similar situation. And it was very, very uncommon in the content that I created, the presentations I did, the newsletters I wrote, where I would talk about web development. More often than not, it was talking about digital marketing and how to use a good website, right? So at the end of the day, I knew that my ideal buyer was like a marketing director, VP of marketing, small business owner, and their outcome they were searching for was a website that helped them generate leads and grow their business. They're looking for a good website that had a strategy behind it that made them successful. And we sold a good website. We did custom, awesome WordPress websites. And what I focused on was, how do you use a good website? What are those marketing tactics that once you have a good website, you can be successful in actually growing your business? Talked about SEO, talked about different lead generation strategies, talked about all these different things, and even some design things like design trends and all these things to kind of show people, hey, this is what a good website can do. So not talking about my services, but just kind of talking about what can happen beyond that. And that was very successful. And most of our leads came through webinars we did, talking about planning for a new website project, what that looks like. And this is a few years back when it first rolled out, when ADA compliance for website was really important. We talked about that, talked about SEO, had specific webinar sessions just on that. So I knew that my target audience was a marketing director, VP of marketing, and I knew these were all things that they wanted to learn more about, and they were very closely tied to the actual service that we offered. They wouldn't come to a webinar talking about specific web development techniques. That's not something that a lot of people outside of developers really care about, right? But they would come to learn about, the 10 biggest trends in digital marketing in the year 2022. And they would want to come see that because they want to know, hey, as a marketer, I got to stay up and current on web design trends or web marketing trends for that matter on a broader scale. So that's how I would focus creating educational content, is not on the product itself, but the problem that it solves and the outcome that your customer is seeking. That's the kind of content you want to create.
So Dan, I think unintentionally gave me a segue back to your question of some of the unintended benefits of creating content. So a good content strategy, Dan, will make you better at your job. And I will say this, rewinding 5 years, I was an enterprise sales rep. I was doing very well for myself, selling technology with all of like my traditional sales tactics and some online digital stuff. But truly, I had like tried the LinkedIn thing and, heard that cold calling was dead and all of the rest of it. And I had tried investing time in LinkedIn probably about 10-ish years ago and got absolutely no benefit from it. I couldn't figure out how to like join the groups and comment strategically. It just didn't work for me. So I had gone back to traditional sales tactics and was doing well. I did not anticipate that when I started creating content that I was going to get significantly better at my job. And the reason that I say this is, one, you're talking about ideas tied to your role every single day. And so when you look at somebody who's in sales or an executive who's representing the company and trying to, win over customers, partner in a firm, or however we want to phrase sales, if you are in a customer facing role, you are naturally in a sales role. You're representing your company. And there's not a lot of, other than like role playing and actual experience in front of a customer, that gives you the opportunity to test your messaging, to really hone in on clarity and figuring out exactly how to get your ideas across to your prospect or your customer and help them connect the pieces that you're trying to bring together without content creation. Content creation gives you this opportunity to test out ideas, think through the way that you communicate and get better at communicating with clarity. You are constantly practicing your messaging and the value that you bring to the table as that like thought leader when you're creating content. And so obviously if you're hopeless and you know nothing, I would say spend some time doing some research and building your skill set before you start creating content and positioning yourself as an expert. But I also don't think you have to be an expert to create content. A lot of my journey over the last 5 years has been learning alongside my audience. And that's part of how I got better at my job too, is I had new ideas come at me from engaging with people's comments. I have connections that I've built online that have gone on to write books where they send me an advanced copy that I get to read and give them feedback on, but then I am expanding my knowledge in the industry. I'm learning new things about my own industry and getting better throughout that process as well. So I think that content creation, like bucket number one that surprised me, going back to your original question, James, was I didn't think it was going to make me better at my job that I was doing day in and day out. And it absolutely did. And the other piece that comes along with it is the confidence that you build through creating content. And there's not a lot of things that I can think of other than, again, just like achieving success within your career that allows you to build confidence in your ideas and get more comfortable with sharing and coming to the table and like putting forward your views the same way that content creation does. And James can attest, was not a confident person when I started in sales. I had things that I was confident in, but like overall as a individual, I didn't have the same confidence that I do now. Content creation and getting the opportunity to express myself and my views and kind of like work through my industry knowledge and what I'm learning has all built that confidence for me in a different way that allows me to show up more in my content, but also has allowed me to show up more confidently for our clients, or when I was working for someone else's business, share my ideas more freely. And so those two things of like getting better at my job and building that confidence, I think were the two biggest like kind of surprise factors that came out of content creation.
So Emma was a social studies major in college, and she likes psychology. What's that psychology, principle or whatever it's called, that like when you are looking for something or aware of something, you see more of it?
You're putting me on the spot. I'd have to
Failed. This is why she's not a social studies teacher anymore, and she's doing sales coaching, sales consulting.
Fail.
If someone knows it in the comments, I forgot what it's called, but there's that principle of like when you buy a red truck, you see red trucks on the road all over the place, or whatever that thought process is. And
I think it's recency bias, but I'm double checking right now.
Someone in the comments has to know. We have to have some psych people here. But this is a really important thing to think about too when it comes to executing on a digital strategy, creating content for an audience, trying to grow your reach that way, is that you will start to see opportunities to teach people all the time. You will see content everywhere. Every conversation that you have with a prospect or with someone you're meeting at a networking event, you'll be like, oh, someone asked a question about what I do. I should create content about that. I should do something with it. So this muscle gets flexed more often. It gets trained where you actually get really good at creating content, but it also helps you really become someone who's very good at teaching people. And you're always looking for opportunities to add value through your knowledge and grow and learn that way. So, and we've seen it countless times, and we actually came up in conversation with some of our community members last week that like, it's almost like a burden that you start seeing too much opportunity to create content once you have that muscle going and you're actually like out there seeing things. It's everywhere opportunity for creating content, but that 100% plays into your business development and ability to serve your customers better if you have that mindset going. So I just wanted to kind of call that out too. There is some reality to flexing that muscle and growing that, because you will become much better at serving your customers in the process.
All right. So it was not recency bias. Recency bias was the wrong thing. It is the frequency illusion, or the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon.
Sounds German.
Before we wrap up for today, I want to make a last call for any other questions that people might have. I see that there are a number of you who probably haven't popped into the comments and are lurking in the background right now. But while we wait for you to emerge from the shadows, James is going somewhere. I was about to ask him a question, but I'm not anymore. I have a feeling, going back to the puppy, that the puppy might have done something in his office that was undesirable. For those of you that have got questions, please pop them into the comments here. And to that effect, I think I hear him coming back. James, we were talking about Lurkers. Let's talk about Lurkers a little bit before we wrap it up today.
Yes.
I have a feeling you might have gone to get a Larry sticker or something.
Yeah, we have Larry stickers. So Larry is that backwards, everybody, probably?
No, it's right way.
Okay. Larry is our monster. He's our kind of our anti-mascot, Larry the Lurker. We have Larry, don't be a lurker stickers. And then we have just Larry, if you want to have Larry as something. If you are commenting today, if you're in the comment section, Emma's going to hit you up. She's going to get your address. If you want to get it, give it to us, and we will send you some
sly delegation of responsibilities.
I'll tell you why Emma's going to do it, not me, because my handwriting is god awful, and if I write down your address on an envelope, it probably won't go to your house. So this is another last call too. If you have another question, if you haven't spoken up yet today and you want some Larry stickers, we're going to send these bad boys out. So feel free to drop a comment, question, whatever down below, and we'll get you some Larry stickers too.
Let's talk about for a second though this idea of Larry the Lurker. So we have Larry, and you don't want to be like Larry, because Larry is lurking in the shadows, not engaging and not taking advantage of a digital strategy. I talked about it a little bit at the beginning, where if you are able to consistently show up once a week with creating content, you're going to kind of like rise to the top of LinkedIn users. Do you want to talk a little bit about like how many people are actually creating content, James?
Hey, there's Rico. Yes. So we were actually just in Ontario. When was that?
No, I'm there next month.
Not Ontario. Sorry, Alberta. We were there in the fall. So yeah, we do go there, and we also ship there.
Yes, we
Yes. So the data on this, and you've probably heard this before. I talk about it often in the content. So if you've seen our content before, you know it. There's a principle called the 1% principle. And that is when you look at different online communities, message boards, social media websites, different community involvement websites, there's continual distribution model where only 1% of the people who are actively involved on the platform create content on a regular basis. And LinkedIn itself has published data on this, that you are in the top 1% of users if you create content once a week. And the other data on that is that 90% of people never post at all. And then that remaining, 9-10% will comment and engage on a regular basis, but not, creating original content. So this is a very, very, very easy way to elevate yourself on top of the platform. Again, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Instagram, whether it's a message board that you're a part of or some sort of group discussion you're part of, if you are someone who creates content on a regular basis, chances are you will be in the top 1% of users. And there's not many things in life where it's that easy to rise to the top. But it just goes to show that just literally the activity of doing things will make you rise above. So that is the data on it. And so that is why we are such big proponents of not being like Larry, don't be a lurker, and just start creating content, and not just creating content for the sake of creating content, but truly educating your audience, becoming that favorite teacher, being somebody that your audience wants to follow because your advice is so valuable, the content you're creating is so helpful, that you become that favorite teacher and someone that people want to buy from. So that's our whole entire, philosophy behind the digital strategy that we do.
So we've got a couple of last questions that popped in, and you can certainly keep them flowing in as well. But the idea of, and you kind of second comment coming in specifically on LinkedIn, how do you showcase consultative services when you're selling up like service as opposed to a product? I would say it's almost easier for you to flex the muscle of services online than it is product, because you're less likely to fall into the trap of features and functionality and demo that I was talking about before. So one of the pieces of advice that James and I always go back to when we're helping people start creating content, and specifically in this service provider camp, is really important. And I think James might have already said it once on the call today or live stream today, is the idea of starting with the questions that you get from customers most frequently. So when you sit down with a customer for a discovery call, what are the things that they're asking you? And not like, how big is your team or what locations do you have, but like, what questions are they asking you to try and uncover if you're the right partner to help them implement the solution that they've got or provide the services that you're selling. Start creating content with those foundational questions that people are asking you, with that mindset of an educator. Again, helping them learn bits and pieces of the things that you've learned in your career so far. And don't ever be afraid that you're giving away too much information. Going back to like my days in enterprise software, I sold the software, but truly the company that I worked for was a consulting and service provider, like that we resold software. So we were not the developers of the platforms that I was selling. I got the added benefit of being able to sell those solutions as a part of like how I was helping solve problems. But we always started with our services. And we had a methodology that we used, and that methodology was informed by our team's experience. And over time, how I told that story was strengthened by my own experience. As I got into things, as I mentioned before, I recognized that the people side of change was one of the areas that was most difficult. So I talked about that. I talked about what working with our team would mean in terms of the way we would engage with your team, the way we would involve people, different suggestions that I give to clients when they're in certain stages of the buying process. When I saw a customer that was really struggling with like analysis paralysis and had issued an RFP with 400 questions and was on their third round of demos to try and narrow stuff down, I talked about why that doesn't help you solve problems and how to move past trying to find the perfect solution. I used what was happening with my actual clients and prospects as my fuel for content to help guide other people through the process of choosing the right vendor. So go back to what your customers and your prospects are asking you for, what lessons you've learned through interacting with them, and advise people like you would if you were sitting down and having a conversation with them. The last piece that I'll put here before I see if James has got anything to add, because James also was very much in this situation as well as selling services. You want to have a specific person in mind when you're having these conversations that you're talking to, more than just like nebulous prospect or like 55 to 60-year-old male. You want to actually have a person. So think about your favorite client, the client that you have really helped move mountains with your services. Think about the conversations that you have with them, the problems that they have, and then talk to them when you're creating content, and talk to them as you would as a consultant working with them implementing your services.
Yeah, well, that's all great stuff. And the only thing I would just say is you can even go higher up in the funnel, the buyer's journey, than some of those things too. And one of the most valuable things you can do from a content creation standpoint is help people identify they have a problem. So talk about the problem itself and the symptoms of that problem, not about your services, not about your solutions, not about your process. The things I said are valuable, especially more the middle funnel too. People are looking at different vendors, but simply helping people identify they have a problem and that you can have them have a solution that is an ideal solution for them. That's an incredibly valuable thing to do. So I would think about just talking about the different ways that a problem that you can solve can affect a business and make that something that you talk about. So for instance, we do digital sales strategy. So we can talk about things like businesses not getting leads online, right? Like they see their competitors out there online creating content, and they see their prospects engaging with those competitors, and they are doing nothing, and they are concerned about that, and they're not getting good inbound leads. Not getting inbound leads is a problem that can be solved by having a good digital strategy. Or the same, to the same effect, they might find that their executive team's afraid to create content, so they want to have someone that can come in and teach them and get them comfortable with creating thought leadership content to help them grow their business. That's a problem. Is that fear and getting over that? So us talking about those things helps people understand they have a problem that can be solved. So I'd think about that for your business. And again, as Emma said, for IT services, that's actually very, very easy to do because there's probably a lot of problems that are urgent and expensive for your buyers. And I'd focus on those and talking about those.
So another question kind of talking about like the future of LinkedIn, the evolution of the creator economy, and kind of like predictions about the platform evolution over time. What we're seeing, and we've kind of alluded to this a little bit already, is that LinkedIn is very significantly signaling that they'd like to move towards a video. When you look at pretty much every social media platform, they are all becoming video dominant. And LinkedIn is taking that thread and kind of like pulling it as well. As recently as the last couple of weeks, LinkedIn did also have a big creator event where they announced the future of video on the platform and specifically called out abilities for companies to partner with specific creators through their Top Voices program to help create a way for creators to make money on LinkedIn as a platform. And they are again, signaling that video is going to be a thing of the future for them. I've gotten multiple emails over the last couple of weeks from like the different creator programs that are associated with LinkedIn, talking about higher engagement rates and higher watch rates and views over the top of video than other types of content. So I would say that they are definitely pushing in that direction and pushing in the direction of creating a mechanism for creators to monetize on the platform, tied to this idea of like the creator economy. That being said, outside of LinkedIn, with some of the research that I have done tied to the algorithm and what other people are seeing, there's a pretty significant different story, I guess, that carousel posts and content that is like information heavy in a written form still performs really well on LinkedIn. But again, like all of the people that are performing well are typically the people that are consistent. So whether it's written content, carousels, video, whatever it is, going back to the idea of not being a lurker, the most important thing for you to be able to get eyeballs on your brand and eyeballs on you as an individual is to show up consistently. And over time, that consistency leads to higher impression rates than trying to like gamify whatever's going on from the LinkedIn algorithm perspective.
And we already talked about it earlier too, but I just want to emphasize again that being a true creator is a different approach. It is going after follower count. It is going after impressions, so that when brands come to you, you can say, "Here's my engagement rate. Here's my average impressions per post." And obviously, brands are looking for a niche. They don't like if we started promoting our services through Kim Kardashian's Instagram, it wouldn't do much for us. But if we did it through someone, let's say that's maybe an influencer in the sales space or an author in the sales space, that would do good things for us, right? So it's still important to have a niche there. But that is one approach to a digital strategy. Is your goal is to make your business your reach. That's a creator. On the flip side, for a vast majority of us, it is we are trying to build an audience of people who are prospective buyers for our business. So different approach. A book that I love just to kind of get this mindset going on building an audience is Tribes by Seth Godin. So if you haven't checked that out, it's a great book, really quick read. But going back to what we said earlier, the goal is to get a very niche audience that loves the content you're creating because it speaks directly to them. That's what you're going after. It's not just the broader, reach online. But it's important to know the trends that are happening on that creator side of things so that you're not, hamstringing yourself and hamstringing your ability to actually reach your audience because you're not doing what the platforms want you to do from a reach standpoint. So I just want to make that caveat there.
All right. We have reached the end of our time together for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and for your questions. Like James said, if you commented over the next day or two, I will spend some time
I'm going to do the DM strategy.
I'm doing my happy little elf work to get you Larry the Lurker stickers. But tell us in the comments before you pop off if another Q&A, open discussion, ask us anything is something you'd like to see again next month. We enjoy doing these sessions. They're nice for us to get that exposure to you guys and the questions that you're actually looking for answers on. But let us know if you would join us again.
Also say too, if you found this valuable, definitely check out our Catalyst community. If you are someone who is looking to really get started or even leverage and grow your digital strategy, we have a community of business leaders who are executing on digital strategies. We have master classes. We have one today, actually. We have weekly group calls. We do content on there. Actually, we have an AI agent called Larry who goes through all of our content, including this call that will get fed to him to give answers to people too. So if you want to join the community or if you have questions on the community, just shoot us a DM. We'd be happy to pop on a call with you and talk through that as well.